Hey everyone, welcome to this edition of Iowa Panfishing. Today was a spring cleaning day here at home. Did the lawn for the first time in 2022. Also did some work in the garage. Made a couple of trips to some construction and hazardous waste facilities to get rid of some old clutter in the garage. And so since I've spent the day working around the house, I decided I'm going to do a project today. And that is to build my own worm farm. Now, there are all kinds of videos out there on how to do this. I'm certainly no expert. This is the first time I've ever done this. But I've done a lot of study. YouTube is good for that. And I've got a plan. And so I want to share that with you and show you how you can put together your own worm farm for under $30. And that includes the worms to get it started. All right, stay tuned. All right, so let's begin by going over what you're going to need for this project. By way of tools, the only tools you're going to need is a drill and a pair of needle nose pliers, and the pliers are optional actually, but you are going to need a drill. And I think it's important to note at this point in the video that no one was injured, including yours truly, while Tony operated a power tool. You have no idea how important that is. All right, but those are the only two tools you're going to need. You're going to need 2 buckets, 2 bins, any size, however big you want your farm to be. You're going to need 2 buckets. You're going to need only 1 lid for those 2 buckets. You're going to need a brick. You're going to need a brick. You're going to need some yard waste. You're going to need some leaf litter. And since I did the lawn today, I've got fresh leaf litter. First cleanup of the year. You're going to need some shredded paper. I'll talk a little bit more about what kind of paper I'm using there. I think that's going to be important. You're going to need some topsoil. You're going to need some water. You're going to need worms. And I'll tell you why I picked these particular red worms. That's what I'm going to be growing. Are red worms, and you're going to need something for your worms to munch on. That's it. Now, I spent $30 total on this project, and that's because I didn't really have anything to start with. But if you have a couple of bins, same size bins laying around your house, that's free. If you already have some topsoil because you're gardening, that's free. If you need some worms, that might be the only thing really that you might need to purchase. But everything else can be done with what you have around your home, quite possibly. But for me, this was a $30 project. All right, so that's everything you need to get started. So now let's put this thing together. All right, so let's start with the buckets. I'm going to just set the lid aside because we'll talk about that in a minute. So I've got 2 buckets, 2 bins the same size. I'm using 7-gallon bins for my project. I didn't want to go too big, didn't want to go too small, since this is the first time I've ever done this. So you need these 2 bins. Now, for the first bin, we'll call the one on the left here bin number 1. For the first bin, you're not going to do anything to this bin. No construction required at all. In fact, the only thing you're going to do with this bin is you're going to take this brick and you're going to put it in the bottom of your bin, right in the center, okay? Just like that. The second bin, you're going to drill a series of holes. You'll drill a series of holes. You can decide where you want them. You don't want to put them up the middle because this is going to be where the bin sits on the brick. So it kind of defeats the purpose of putting holes there. So around that area where these holes will be open and exposed. And then you want to also put a few holes towards the top of your bin on either end. Just like that, I'm going to spare you the torture of watching me operate a drill. With the lid, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to put a bunch of holes in the lid, and all these holes obviously are for air. Now, the reason you're going to use the two bins is bin number 2 that you've placed the holes in, that's going to sit right inside bin number 1, just like that. And so what that allows for is drainage. So as we put this together, there's going to be a lot of moisture, and you want that extra moisture to be able to drain. You don't want it to get too wet. You don't want to drown your worms. And the neat thing is that what drains into that bottom bin is called compost tea. Compost tea. And you can mix that with some water, dilute it a little bit, use that as fertilizer in your gardens, around your trees, plants, what have you. A great natural fertilizer. All right, so I'm going to set aside bin number 1 with the brick in it. I'm going to set that aside. We're not going to need that till later. All of our work now is going to be in bin number 2 that has the holes already drilled in them. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to add some paper. You're going to add some shredded paper. Now, you could use newspaper. I've seen people use newspaper. You can use Xerox paper, clean Xerox paper. What I've chosen to use is I've shredded up a couple of yard waste bags, a couple of compost bags. So you begin by putting a layer of paper in, nice generous layer of paper. Make sure the entire bottom is covered, and the paper is going to really help with the moisture. Once you've got a layer of paper down like that, now your water comes in and you're going to squirt that down. You're going to moisten that up. You don't want to soak it too much. Spray some water on that. Mix the paper around. You want the paper to be nice and damp, but not too wet. There we go. Mix that around again. And again, this wet paper is going to help with keeping your farm moist. And that's going to be key. You want to make sure that your worms always have moist compost. All right, so that's step 1. Next thing you're going to do is, let me reach over here. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to add a layer. You're going to add a layer of leaf litter. And again, you want to just cover the entire surface. Just like that. All right. And you don't necessarily have to. I don't feel like I put a lot of water on that first layer, but you can wet down your leaf litter a little bit. Right? And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to add topsoil. All right, so I busted open my topsoil bag here. And just put a generous amount of topsoil in there. Now, important that when you pick your soil, that you want to make sure there's no kind of herbicides in the soil. That could kill your worms. So you don't want to use any kind of soil that's treated with any kind of herbicide. In the videos that I watched, people talked a lot about peat moss, using a peat moss composition, and so that's what I've got here. I got peat moss, natural soils natural to this area. Just pat that down a little bit, make sure that's all even. All right, so what you've done so far is you've put down some paper, you've moistened the paper, you put down some leaf litter, you can moisten that a little bit if you want to, and then you add some topsoil. And guess what you're going to do again? You're going to repeat the process. All right, so let's do that. Actually, you're probably going to do it 2 more times. that's it. All right, so now I did that 3 times. Again, the process is simple. It's a 3-step process. You begin with your shredded paper, you moisten that well, then you put on your leaf litter, then you put on your topsoil, and then you repeat that process 2 more times. So you have 3 layers of paper, 3 layers of leaf litter, 3 layers of soil. Once you're done with that, and made sure that the soil is well below my air holes here. I don't want any escapage. Once you've got this last layer on, you want to put a liberal amount of water on. You don't want to soak it, but you want it really nice and moist. Really nice and moist. And again, you've got that bottom bucket for the drainage. So if you add a little too much water to start, well, it's going to drain. It's going to drain. We're almost ready to introduce our worms. All right, now it's time to introduce our worms. Let me take a second just to tell you what kind of worms I'm using. Now, you can use any kind of worms. You can use night crawlers, red worms, Canadian night crawlers. You can use basically whatever you want. But I've chosen to go with the Wangler fat, juicy red worms. And really one of the main reasons for that, and it was suggested by someone else who made a worm farm video, is that no refrigeration is needed. They don't need to be refrigerated. Now, of course, you need to keep your worms in a cool place. But these worms are a little more resilient. The temperature range that these worms can endure is a little more than some other worms. So these worms could do okay 80 to 90 degrees. If you're keeping your worm farm in your garage or definitely an out of the way, out of sight, out of mind place in the house, then you should have no problem with temperature. But you don't have to worry about refrigerating these. So I've got, this was the most expensive part of this project, was getting the worms. It was about $3.50 for 30 worms. I got 4 packs, that's 14 bucks. And so let's introduce our worms to the worm farm. All right. All right. So now you just spread them around a little bit and you just let them do their thing. Before too long here, they're going to start to make their way under the ground and get acclimated with their new surrounding. And then comes the food. All I've got here for food is some shredded up lettuce and some carrots. But any kind of organic food material will work. And you can also use cricket food, I was told. You can use cricket food for this as well. All right, let me move this out of the way. Slide this back. Bringing back a box or a bin number 1 here with the brick inside. And then you're just going to, there you go. You're just going to take bin number 2, put it inside bin number 1. Then put your lid on. And again, I like these particular bins. It's a nice secure lid. And there you go. You've got a worm farm doing this. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is the first DIY video I've ever done in my life. One of the very first DIY projects I've ever done in my life. So if I sound excited, I really am. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. If you have questions and comments, if you have tips about the way you've done your own worm bins, I welcome that. I want people to be able to learn from this channel about fishing and everything associated with fishing, and I certainly don't know everything. So if you have good suggestions for maintaining your own worm farm, I'd love to see it in the comment section. All right, until next time, friends, let's go fishing.